The Cre Dominion was not just powerful. It was inevitable. For over 200 years their fleets had moved like a closing fist across the stars, measured, disciplined, merciless. They fought 164 campaigns. They won 164 campaigns. Worlds did not rebel against the Dominion. Worlds surrendered early to avoid becoming an example. They called the main war fleet many names. The Immortals. The Unbroken Line. The fleet that does not bleed. On Cre Prime, children grew up shouting those names as they played. Toy ships crashed down on plastic worlds. Holograms of burning cities decorated patriotic parades. Every anthem, every monument, every speech circled back to the same simple creed. We do not lose. And at the center of that myth was a single colossus of steel and fire. The Eternal Spear. It was less a ship and more a mobile continent. Layered armor glowed with shield grids. Spinal cannons ran the length of its hull. Along its sides yawned hangar bays large enough to swallow dreadnoughts. It had never retreated. It had never broken. It had never once been outgunned. From his throne-like command chair, Lord Wiener watched empires die. He had ordered the burning of palace worlds, the silencing of border kingdoms, the precision annihilation of any species foolish enough to say no to the Dominion. He wasn't loud and he wasn't theatrical. For him, war was a clean equation. We deploy. We strike. They break. We move on, he said to his officers. That is all there is. His officers believed him. The galaxy believed him. Until Earth. The matter began officially with a petition. A simple document from a young species seeking full recognition within the Galactic Council. Equal seat, equal rights, and equal say. Humans. A minor entry in most archives. One life-bearing world on a yellow star. No ancient empire. No godships. No weapons of extinction on public record. They had colonies and fleets, yes, but nothing that troubled anyone who measured power in thousands of capital ships and centuries of conquest. The petition reached the council. Protocols were followed. Committees logged it. Debates opened and stalled. And as was inevitable, news of it reached the Cre Dominion embassy. Laughter followed. On the high balconies of the council chamber, Dominion delegates spoke their minds without restraint. They request equality, one scoffed. They have existed in the interstellar community for what, 50, 60 of their years? We have ruled sectors for generations. Their fleet is a collection of patched-together escorts for the most part, added another. Their homeworld is undefended by anything resembling a real deterrent. They should be grateful we allow them to trade at all. Around them, many delegates remained very carefully silent. Nobody liked the Dominion, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Down on the lower steps, an old insectoid scholar named Cre raised his thin arm. He spoke quietly, translators soft against the chamber's high ceiling. I have studied their records, he said. The Terrans are not what you think. Their history is persistent. They suffer. They break. And then they return harder than before. To dismiss them entirely would be unwise. A feathered noble hissed with amusement. You over-romanticize primitives, he said. One small world against the Immortals? Don't insult us. A reptilian warlord flexed his claws. If they want respect, he growled, let them earn the Dominion's attention. If the Cre move on their world it will be over in hours. Murmurs of amusement rippled through the hall. Cre tightened his grip on his staff. You mistake quiet for weakness, he warned. You always have. Nobody listened. Warnings seldom survive contact with ego. The report reached Lord Wiener aboard the Eternal Spear. He read it with no visible reaction. Bridge lights painted his scaled features in warship blue as the details scrolled past. Species, human/Terran. Homeworld, Sol 3, Earth. Status, developing power, growing fleets, minor influence. Request, equal standing. He did not laugh. He did not need to. They ask for equality, he told them calmly. They don't deserve it. An aide waited. Shall we recommend denial, my lord? Wiener's gaze stayed fixed on the starfield outside. No, he said. We will recommend education. The word hung in the air like a blade. He rose from his chair and keyed into the fleet-wide channel. On thousands of bridges, every Dominion officer straightened as the image of Lord Wiener materialized tall, composed, haloed in tactical screens. Officers of the Immortals, he said, we have fought 164 campaigns in service to the Dominion. Not once have we failed. Not once have we retreated. We are the measure by which all others are found wanting. A young species now petitions to stand as our equal. We will answer them as we have answered all before them. The next campaign is scheduled. Destination, Terra. The answer was a rolling thunder of approval. On carrier decks, pilots raised helmets high. On gunships, crews slammed their fists against bulkheads. On Cre Prime, when the announcement hit the public feeds, the crowds roared approval. 164 wins. 165th incoming. In itself, the departure was a show. Columns of warships slid from dry dock rings, engines flaring, banners pulsing bright along their hulls. Escort screens locked into flawless geometry across millions of kilometers. A fact that the Dominion made sure the galaxy saw. Civilians on the neutral worlds watched in guarded awe. The Immortals move again. Rumors flew. The humans provoked them. Earth demanded equality. This will be quick. In the quiet corners of data archives and war colleges, a few uneasy voices murmured. They are overreacting. Crushing a petitioner is bad optics. Humans have a history of ugly wars. Are we sure? But the streams reflected the Immortals, all in formation, unending, unbreakable. And images are louder than doubts. On the other side of the void, Earth was watching. Not through rumor. Not through second-hand council notes. Through eyes of its own. A dozen officers sat around a black glass table in a sealed room beneath a mountain, the Cre Dominion armada glowing in clean lines of tactical blue in the air above it. 1,000 ship counts. Mass estimates. Weapon profiles. Historical doctrines. Victory logs. The Immortals. A young analyst spoke, his voice tight. Sir, this is their primary strategic fleet. They've never been beaten. They've crushed civilizations older than us. If they're really coming here. The man at the head of the table, Terran Admiral Hale, studied the projection. His uniform wasn't decorated with flashy medals. His voice was even when he finally responded. Every power they crushed made the same mistake. The analyst swallowed. Sir? Hale's eyes were cold but not cruel. Measured. They thought that fear was one-sided. They thought that a legend could not break. They thought humans would be like everyone else. A moment's silence. We are not everyone else, he said. On a distant screen, another data tag blinked online. A classified asset. No broadcast signature. No public acknowledgement. Designation, Tiras 001, Resolute. Status, silent. Ready. Hale looked at it a moment. Signal black sites. Update contingency protocols. Let them come. The frozen moon of Frost 7 stretched out in every direction, an endless waste of ice and pale wind. The observation dome sat like a glowing bubble on the frozen plain, filled with alien students in heated suits. Even behind the glass, their breath misted the air. On the ice outside, one lone human sat inside a small dome of snow. No heater, no machine, no miracle technology. Only knowledge, muscle, and calm. Professor Zelthar stood at the console, 4 eyes locked on the data streaming from the sensors. Let's see how long your human warmth lasts, he murmured. Huddled inside the igloo, Marcus Webb adjusted his position, resting. He'd spent his share of nights in various shelters in his life to learn the rhythm of the cold, how it creeps, how it tricks you into moving when you shouldn't. He closed his eyes and slowed his breathing, letting the silence of Frost 7 fill his mind. Outside, the wind screamed. The temperature dropped another degree. The igloo held. Inside the observation dome, students were glued to the display. Temperature inside stays 0 degrees Celsius, one reported. External still -42. That's impossible, said another. Snow is frozen water. The Dominion armada moved through the dark like a tide that couldn't even imagine resistance. Thousands of ships, perfectly aligned, their engines glowing blue in the endless black. Their formation stretched across millions of kilometers. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, an orchestra of power, each one certain of its role. They had destroyed civilizations before. They had burned empires older than their own. They had never once been afraid. In the council chamber, the declaration of war was greeted by half-hearted applause and thin smiles. The Cre Dominion had so decided, and none wished to gainsay them. The head speaker cleared his throat. Let the Immortals remind the galaxy that peace exists only under order. The old insectoid scholar, Kuras, stood in the far corner. He leaned on his cane, his voice low and even. You are celebrating a funeral, he said. A feathered delegate cocked his head. Whose funeral? Kuras turned his gaze to the magnificent projection of the Dominion fleet as it sailed across the stars. Yours, he said. The laughter that followed was nervous, brittle, forced. Out in the darkness, the immortals pressed forward. Before them, scouts cut through the void, sleek, fast, and invisible. They sent back clean reports. No resistance. No activity. No fleets. Until the first one didn't. The first ship to disappear was the Varus. Its transmission ended mid-sentence, a burst of static, then silence. No explosion. No signal. No debris. A replacement scout was sent. It reported a single anomaly, a faint gravitational ripple, before it too fell silent. The third ship disappeared 2 days later. Lord Wiener dismissed the reports as malfunctions. "This is Terran space," he said. "Their systems are primitive. Interference is inevitable. Continue." But on the bridges of his cruisers, engineers whispered to each other. Pilots glanced at the scanners more than once. A hairline crack began to form in the hearts of the immortals. The silence back on Earth was intentional. Every Dominion probe to enter Terran space found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Every known defense grid had gone dark. Every satellite, every relay, every beacon was quiet. The Dominion thought it meant fear. It actually meant focus. Under the oceans, under the deserts, inside hollowed-out moons, humans were watching. Their sensors tracked the CRE fleet, mapping every formation, every signal, every frequency. In a bunker deep beneath Mount Resolute, the Terran admiral stood in a somber, blue-lit room. Before him hovered a projection of the Dominion Armada. He turned to his officers. "The immortals have crossed the border," he said. "From this moment they are within range." One young officer hesitated. "Sir, our silence, they'll assume." "They'll assume what every arrogant empire assumes," Hale said, cutting her off. "That silence means surrender. Let them believe it." He stepped closer to the display, studying it as though examining a specimen under glass. "Our objective is not to fight a battle," he said. "Our objective is to eradicate a legend." Something stirred far out in the darkness between Neptune and Pluto, where the sun shone as a pale, chill point of light. At first, it seemed like a shadow amongst shadows. Then lines of light flickered across its hull, faint, methodical, like veins waking from sleep. The Resolute was ancient and new all at once. A black shape larger than most cities, invisible to conventional scans. It had slept for decades, a ghost in the dark, part myth, part deterrent. Now, as the Dominion sensors swept the area, its hull absorbed every signal and gave nothing back. Deep inside, thousands of crew came alive. Engines hummed. Weapon cores unlocked. One command resonated across all decks. "Wake the ship." Reports of missing scouts continued on the Eternal Spear. The Varus, the Saren, the Lokesh. "All gone, my lord." Wiener's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "We cannot. Their transponders ceased simultaneously. And the cause? Unknown." The Fleetmaster's claws clicked softly against his chair. "Unknown is not an answer, Captain." The officer bowed his head. "We have no wreckage, no heat signatures. It's as if the ships never existed." Wiener's voice was cold. "Then we will proceed as if they did not." He turned towards the stars. "No silence will stop the Dominion." Yet, deep inside, something older than pride stirred, a faint, unspoken unease. Rumors started spreading in the Galactic Council. Delegates whispered in shadowed corners. "The scouts aren't reporting. Something's wrong in Terran space. The Dominion is hiding the losses." Kuras attempted again to speak to the assembly. "They are walking into a storm," he said. "I warned you. You are all deaf." One young avian delegate snorted loudly. "You think the humans could challenge the immortals?" "I think," said Kuras, "that you confuse technology with intelligence. Humans have both." Nobody was listening. No one ever listens to the historian until history repeats itself. 3 weeks after departure, the immortals crossed the Terran border. The stars ahead seemed darker somehow. The light felt slower. It felt like the void itself was heavier. On one of the cruisers, a sensor officer whispered, "I don't like this." His captain ignored him. "Our readings show no resistance. That's all that matters." Yet the officer's voice shook. "Then why does it feel like something's watching us?" Across the fleet, the same feeling grew. Every ping seemed to echo. Every scan came back, wrong. Too empty. Too quiet. Like space was holding its breath. Wiener stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by shimmering tactical displays. "Terran resistance is non-existent," he said. "Continue forward." He did not see the shadow moving behind his fleet, silent, patient, and waiting. Back in Terran command, Admiral Hale watched. Rows of monitors tracked the Dominion fleet as it moved deeper into Sol space. "They've entered the kill zone," an officer said. Hale nodded. "And the scouts?" "None remain." The Admiral's eyes turned to a single glowing icon on the board. 001 Resolute, status, active. He let his breath out slowly. "Then we begin." In the black silence of deep space, the Resolute drifted forward. Its weapons charged noiselessly. Its rail cannons hummed at low resonance. Inside its command bridge, the Terran crew worked with calm precision. For decades they had waited for this day. Every simulation, every contingency, every silence, all leading here. The Admiral of the Resolute stepped forward. "The Dominion calls itself immortal," he said. "Let's show them what mortality looks like." The crew replied as one voice. "Aye, Admiral." Far behind, the Dominion fleet on the Eternal Spear detected a brief spike of electromagnetic interference, faint, almost ghost-like. "Unknown contact," a technician said. Wiener barely looked up. "Ignore it." "But my lord." "I said to ignore it. Humans have nothing that is a threat to us." He turned back to the holographic projection of their route. "Prepare planetary strike formations. We will make this swift." But outside the hull, dark shifted. Something enormous was there, too faint to record, too close to decipher. The weeks passed. Yet the echo of that frozen moon experiment still rolled through the corridors of the Galactic University. Students quoted Marcus Webb's words. Professors re-examined their papers. Deep within the research wing, Professor Zelthar rewrote everything he thought he knew about life itself. Inside a brightly lit conference hall, dozens of species representatives sat around the wide, circular table. At its center was a human who had constructed a home from snow and willpower. Opposite them, the professor who had once belittled him now sat silently and proudly. Zelthar opened the meeting. "Colleagues," he began, his translated voice calm and measured. "Our understanding of adaptation has changed. We once defined survival as a contest of biology. But today we recognize another force, the adaptability of mind. We have seen it in this human before us." Every eye was now on Marcus. He nodded modestly. "I didn't come here to prove superiority. I came to show that knowledge is a survival tool every species can." The message rolled through the Dominion armada like a cold tide. You should not have come. Not yelled, not warped. Calm, human, undeniable. Bridges fell silent. Crews froze. Fingers hovered an instant over glass and steel. On the Eternal Spear, the voice of Lord Wiener cut through the stillness like a blade. "Source." A dozen officers answered at once, overlapping, panicked and precise. "Every band. No point of origin. Carrier wave appears to be us, my lord. Our own networks are relaying it." Wiener's jaw clenched. "Quarantine internal comms. Air gap tactical. We will not be toyed with." He lifted one hand to the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, advance. Weapons free the moment a target is identified." He did not say we don't lose. He didn't need to. The armada moved as it always had, perfectly. But the dark moved too. The first shadow passed like an eclipse across the forward screens of a Vanguard cruiser. Stars went out one by one, replaced by a single line of black geometry, long and wrong, swallowing starlight. The crew didn't have a word for ship that large. The captain did the simplest thing in the universe. Fire. Lances, beams, cones of superheated matter, an angled aurora devoured the void. Impacts blossomed, flared and drifted. And then peeled away, scrambling off an invisible contour. A shape emerged. Black hull. Scarred plating. Weapon seams pulsing with a predator's heartbeat. White Terran letters, implacable as a verdict. Resolute. On a dozen bridges, breath caught. On one, someone whispered, "It's a station." On another, "It's a city." On most, nothing at all. The Resolute didn't broadcast again. It answered in motion. A spinal assembly along its midline rotated, locked, and thumped once. More felt than heard. A slug the size of a small shuttle left the barrel at a fraction beneath relativistic speed. It passed through the Vanguard cruiser's bow, stem, and spine so quickly the ship's computers kept reporting hull integrity for a half-second after its soul was gone. On sensors, the signature looked like a star winking. On the Eternal Spear's plot, a blue icon went to gray. No debris cloud. No splinters. Just subtraction. "Confirm kill," Wiener said, his voice flat. "Confirmed." The officer swallowed. "No wreckage." "Second volley," Wiener ordered. "Whole wing. Focus fire." Across millions of kilometers, the batteries obeyed. The immortals turned the dark to noon. Coherent lances, massed missiles, gravitic scythes. The Resolute slid not far, just enough. Impacts skated across angled plates and nested shields that reconfigured between frames. Blooming detonations were swallowed by hungry black bays opening and closing like gills. Counter-missiles arrived inside incoming swarms, not at them. Kill boxes folded and unfolded as if the Terran ship was editing reality instead of enduring it. Shields at 87, a calm voice reported on the Terran bridge. Thermal load nominal. Spine charged, another said. Solution stacks green. The Terran admiral didn't raise his voice. Cut their line. The second slug tore a gap through a destroyer and the cruiser behind it. The third and fourth walked the seam between two carriers, spitting light and vacuum from a wound that stretched the length of both hulls. As they flinched, a sheet of micromunitions, dull, unremarkable, a storm of metal crossed the gap and went still. Then they weren't munitions anymore. They were instruction sets. Hull became mineral, mineral became dust, dust became nothing a combat library was trained to see. The carriers dimmed and were gone. Report. Wiener snapped. Carrier 9, 10, both absent, said an officer, his voice quaking. No mass shadow. No. Absent is not a casualty class, Wiener hissed. It is now, someone whispered too quietly and then pretended he hadn't. In the council chamber, the first live feed arrived, patchy, stuttering but real. Delegates leaned forward as a CRE cruiser's bridge lurched on screen. Alarms. Smoke. The sound of someone praying in a language the translator refused to render. A helm officer looked up, eyes huge. It sees us, she breathed, and then the feed turned to blue static and the panel went black. Heads angled toward Kuros without intention. The old scholar didn't gloat. He closed his eyes, listening to the type of silence that follows when a prediction lands. Back in Sol, the battle was a rhythm, cold, mathematical. The immortals had been trained for centuries to fight symmetrical wars, so doctrine after doctrine was tried. Wedge, clamp, pincer, cone, saturation, sacrificial screens, close-in brawls, distant attrition. The Resolute refused their shapes. It fought like a thought. Cut, erase, vanish, reappear. When the fleet pressed to smother it with sheer presence, it didn't back away. It took one step through, a jump so short and precise it stayed inside the geometry of their assault, emerging where command didn't believe a thing that size could fit. A gun deck on a CRE battleship as big as a cathedral filled with light. For one heartbeat, everyone on it saw the Terran ship's hull pass at impossible proximity, black, pitted, immense like a god's knuckles scraping the air. Then the battleship's spine snapped under a rail volley aimed into its own armored gut. The deck didn't explode. It ceased. The young helmsman on Resolute's bridge worked the ship as if it had grown from the bones of his hand. Projector decoys deployed. Stack 3 is hot. Lateral shields blooming, hold, blooming, lock. Micro jump in 5, 4, 3. He didn't reach one aloud. The ship was already elsewhere, and the slugs it had fired when it wasn't were arriving now, as if time had been arranged in advance to accommodate their kill schedule. Admiral, he whispered, they're failing to coordinate. We break a wing and the adjacent wings hesitate. They'll hesitate faster, the Admiral said. Continue. Fear is contagious. Discipline fights it but never erases it. On a CRE cruiser midline, a captain stared at her trembling hands and steeled them by will. We are the immortals, she told her crew, voice iron. We are not a story that ends. Her comm officer didn't look up. Signal from the spear, hold formation. Cut for the spine. Do not break. Execute, she said. On my mark. Something dark slid across the bow. The comm officer finally looked up. What? The Resolute's forward bay doors cracked a finger width. Something small and mean flicked into the gap between ships. A glittering, barely there cloud that didn't behave like matter. The captain felt the deck tilt, just a whisper. Compensate, she snapped. No one replied. The glitter had become a diagram overlaying the world. Beams, struts, anchors, nerves. Every bolt suddenly understood it could be elsewhere. The cruiser resolved into a concept and gently stopped existing. Across the line, 2 gunners who had served 20 campaigns stared into a vacuum where their war had been, found their mouths making a child's sound. On the eternal spear, numbers bled off the board. 57 confirmed absent, someone said, as if the phrase could be corrected by sober delivery. Losses are cascading. Bring us ahead, said Wiener. Ram if we must. My lord. Now. The flagship lurched. It took the spear 6 seconds to close the gap a fraction. In those 6 seconds, the Resolute turned and looked at it. On the Terran bridge, the Admiral finally raised his voice, not shouted, simply filled the room. Priority, decapitation. Do not kill them quickly. Kill them completely. Spine solution resolving, said Fire Control. They've doubled shields midline. Then aim for the edges, said the Admiral. Pride doesn't fortify its flanks. The first slug hit the spear's port quarter. Shields flared, caught, and held barely. The second hit starboard. The third and fourth walked inward, printing a slow, merciless arc. The fifth arrived not from the Resolute at all but from a fixed point of dark that had been empty until now. A remote gunline the Dominion had never seen unfolded from silence and placed a seed of force inside the spear's ventral hanger. A bloom of light crawled outward and went dark like a mouth closing on a scream. Shields collapsing, Spear's tactical chief spat. Rerouting. Another effect. The forward projector domed, sparked, went dark. Batteries to manual. Give me the deck tilted. Wiener's clawed hand dug into the arm of his chair. He bore down on pain and pride together. We are not beaten, he said calmly. We have never. The next slug punched the sentence in half. For a terrible second, every mind aboard tasted a new word none had ever meant before. Defeat. It was metallic. It cut the tongue. Spine recharging, Terran Fire Control reported. Time to glass, short. Do not glass them, said the Admiral. Record them. Split what remains. Leave absence. He looked not at the spear but beyond it to the broad, proud board of the immortals, and saw the oldest truth in war. When the anchor breaks, the line becomes ocean. Now, he said, the Resolute did not roar. It did not exult. It killed. Rail slugs stitched the spear open from prow to keel. Secondary batteries whispered and corner compartments winked out like blown candles. A lattice of minds unfolded not to explode, but to persuade metal to rethink itself. The flagship, symbol for 2 centuries, shook, bent, and in a final indignity, folded like an iron cathedral kneeling without permission. Something that was not hardware broke across the Dominion net. Retreat, someone screamed. Hold, Wiener tried to say. Blood filled his mouth. He spat it onto his command arm and tasted iron and shame. Hold. No one heard him. Or if they did, they couldn't obey. The Immortals did the most mortal thing in the universe. They ran. The Resolute didn't chase. It stepped aside, appeared where flight lanes narrowed and took away just enough ships to turn escape into legend. A carrier that might have made it home became a lesson instead. A cruiser that could have been reparable became a rumor that no debris remained. The young helmsman's hands were shaking on the Terran bridge. He stilled them shamefaced. Admiral, he swallowed. We're winning. We are erasing, said the Admiral softly, correcting. There's a difference. We end the myth or we fight it again next year with more graves. Understood. Signal command, the Admiral added. Phrasebook entry, absence confirmed. Aye. Fragments of news trickled into the council chamber, refusing to coalesce into a lie. Losses. 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 And again, no wreckage. One of the younger delegates who had laughed earlier now put his head in his hands and did not move for a very long time. The reptilian warlord whispered, How many more ships like that do the Terrans possess? Kuros didn't look at him. You are asking the wrong question, he said. Ask instead, how many are they willing to build now that you have given them reason? The gold staff of the head speaker slipped from numb fingers and rang on the marble. No one picked it up. Back in Seoul, the fire died out. The last of the immortals which would die here died. The last of those who would run ran. The Resolute cooled as a furnace cools between forgework and forgework. Its black skin drank the battle's afterglow until it was only shadow again. Killbox clear, sensors said. Battle clock, asked the Admiral. 27 minutes, 41 seconds from first fire, sir. Nobody said sentries undone in half an hour. They didn't need to. The Admiral let the silence sit in the room. Then, stand down to watch. Recover our own. No signals outward beyond plan. He turned to the helmsman. The young man looked very young now that the light of work had left his face. Get some water, the Admiral said in a hushed tone. It will help your hands stop shaking. Aye, the helmsman said, shame and pride warring in his voice, and went to do exactly that. Out beyond the cold shadow of Pluto, the Resolute drifted back to its waiting place. Space closed over it like a wound healing without a scar. The Count was not yet known to the galaxy. It would know the line. They won 164 battles. Then they entered Terran space, and the rest of the sentence would not need to be said. Not tonight. Not by anyone who had seen the dark open its eyes. The silence after victory differs from peace. Peace breathes. Silence listens. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy listened. No distress beacons. No wreckage. No returning heroes. The Cre Dominion, the fleet which had never fallen, was no more. Not defeated. Not broken. Gone. The parade stopped on Cre Prime. The victory song stopped in the middle of a verse that didn't make sense anymore. The ports were crowded with families of officers, waiting for ships that would never appear. They must be delayed, one mother said. They're regrouping, another whispered. But every day the star lanes remained empty. A week later, a single transmission reached the capital. It carried no images, just the trembling voice of a survivor. There was no battle, he said. There was erasure. The void took them. Then static. No one laughed anymore in the Galactic Council. The marble hall that once rang with speeches and arrogance felt like a tomb. Lying on the floor where it had fallen days earlier was the head speaker's golden staff. A projection filled the chamber. Recordings recovered from the Dominion fleet's final hours. Blinding light. Alarms. The voice of Lord Wiener shouting orders that cut off mid-command. And over it all, the same human phrase, calm and cold. You should not have come. Delegates stared in horror as the feed ended. Some trembled. Some prayed. Some would not believe. It's falsified, one shouted. It has to be. The humans couldn't. One ship cannot destroy 1,000. But they all saw it. And they all knew it wasn't falsified. Kuros slowly stepped forward, the old insectoid scholar. You see now, he said, fear is not a weapon the Dominion owns. It is one the Terrans have mastered. Before him stood the reptilian warlord who once taunted him, staring at the floor. The immortals are gone, he whispered. And the humans did it in one night. Feathers rustled. Claws tapped. Fins trembled. Whole species realized that for the first time in memory, the balance of fear had shifted. Across the stars, stories spread faster than light. On trade stations, smugglers told new tales. They say the Terrans built a ship that eats fleets. They say it's powered by black holes. No, it is powered by their hatred. On distant worlds, children whispered to each other before sleep. Don't fly near Earth, they said. The silence will take you. 3 words echoed everywhere like a prayer and a warning. Nothing remained, not even wreckage. On Earth there were no parades. No public broadcast. No songs. The Terran Confederation did not celebrate. Remembered? In a mountain bunker, Admiral Hale stood before his officers. The resolute status read simply, docked. Silent. The galaxy has seen our strength, Hale said quietly. It will think twice before mocking us again. A young officer asked, Sir, will they attack us now? Out of fear? The Admiral's eyes were still inscrutable. If they are, then they too will disappear. He turned away, hands clasped behind his back, staring into the projection of stars. We are done proving we exist, he said. Now we endure. On the Resolute bridge, the crew worked in low light. Systems cooled. Weapons slept. The young pilot who had guided them through the storm stood by the viewport. Admiral, he asked softly, do they respect us now? The Admiral's reflection looked back from the glass. Respect begins with fear, he said. Let that be enough. The stars outside were quiet again. But not empty. Never empty now. Months passed. The Galactic Council fractured. Some insisted on treaties with Earth. Others screamed for rearmament. A few whispered surrender. Every debate ended the same way, with silence. For whenever the word Terran was spoken, someone remembered that last transmission. You should not have come. On a quiet world far from the core, Kuros walked through the archives. He trailed his claws along ancient walls carved with stories of fallen empires. He stopped before a new inscription. It showed a single line of text, simple and absolute. They won 164 battles. Then they entered Terran space, and not even wreckage was found. He bowed his head. So it is written, he whispered. So the galaxy remembers. On Cre Prime, great halls once lined with banners now stood empty. The statues of the immortals were pulled down, their names whispered only in mourning. In their stead, a new phrase was carved into the stone of their once proud academy. First casualty is pride caused by ignorance. Nobody knew who had carved it. But everyone knew who it was for. Years later, cadets across dozens of star nations learned the same lesson in military academies. When facing the Terrans, do not measure them by numbers. Do not weigh them by weapons. Never make fun of their silence. Because silence, they now knew, was the sound of the storm coming. Closer to home, the Resolute drifted in shadow, hidden yet patient. Its hull bore the scars of the battle that ended legends, but it rested in perfect stillness. The crew had gone home. The Admiral walked its empty halls alone. He stood at the viewport, staring out at distant suns, burning faintly. He whispered to nobody, for no glory, just the truth. They called themselves immortal. But immortality ends the instant arrogance begins. He turned from the stars, leaving the bridge dark once more. The galaxy had known countless wars. Empires had risen and fallen. But none left a silence like this one. 4,000 of years on 1,000 worlds, the same question would be asked by children. What happened to the Cre Dominion? And the elders would reply softly, their eyes pointed into the stars. They went to war with Earth. And not even wreckage was found.